遊びが面白い。ニューヨークよりタウンズ。これは街より面白い。富士通。
Hey everybody, welcome back to video game Esoterica. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at two games, the first being Super Shooting Towns, and the second game being Flying Shark. Super Shooting Towns is a Shmup development platform for the FM Towns and the FM Towns Marty, where you can actually create your own shooting games with some pre-built tools. But it actually comes with a sample game, which has absolutely no title whatsoever. I'm going to just call it Bug Shooter. You're playing some sort of beetle. You can just, I think he's a beetle at least, by the horns on his head. But this game is an excellent example of the power of the FM Towns Marty. There is a huge amount of parallax scrolling built into the game. The shooter is competent. The music's great. I really like the graphics. It's not the best game I've ever played, but it's definitely something really fun to experience. And as far as a graphical showcase of what the FM Towns platform could do, it's incredible. You have 4, 5, sometimes even up to 6 parallax layers scrolling by at once, and there's very little slowdown. So it's definitely something, as far as like a tech showcase is concerned, an excellent example of what the Towns could do. And it's another example of an FM Towns exclusive game. There aren't a lot of exclusives for the FM Towns. There are a lot of ports from PC and arcade games, but this is one of the pieces of software that is only available for the FM Towns. There is a prequel to this game called Shooting Towns. I have never gotten that to be able to load onto my Marty. I open up the executable and it just resets the system. And that is one of the interesting things about some of the software on the FM Towns. Some of the CDs aren't self-bootable as far as they won't just launch into the game. When you actually launch Super Shooting Towns, you're going to go into the FM Towns operating system and you're going to use the controller, or if you have a mouse hooked up, the mouse, to actually select the executable, double click it like you would on any other PC, and then the game will actually launch from there. It's kind of just an interesting little aside. But the main part of the package, other than the game you're looking at right now, is the tool set to be able to build your own shmups. Now, granted, that's a huge language barrier because everything is in Japanese, but you can create your own sprites, use pre-baked music, or actually upload your own, as well as do, I'm sure, a lot of other things that I haven't quite figured out yet. I love the graphics on this stage. You have those little green worm guys just kind of bopping up and down on those minecarts. For an untitled game that is just a sample on a development toolset, it is excellent. I mean, I think this is better than some games that were actually released by companies that developed shooters. Music's catchy, the game is challenging, but not too unfair or difficult. When you die, you just respawn right where you are and continue on versus having to be set back. So as far as an actual game's concerned, it's quite good. It's surprising how good this game actually is and feels to play. The game and the toolset was developed by a company called Amorphous, and the only other release that I could find from them is Excellent 10, which is just a compilation of the 10 best games that were developed using their toolset. So they were kind of, maybe they became a different company, maybe they were bought up, maybe they went out of business, but trying to actually track down who the people that made Super Shooting Towns were is quite difficult, but they did leave us this game behind, and you will see the sprites for the boss here. They are quite large, everything looks great. It is really impressive on what they were able to create using the tool set. Kind of feels a little bit like a precursor to something like Little Big Planet or Mario Maker, where you get that tool set and you're able to create something on your own. Now, I know there were other games that had the same concept, like RPG makers, but kind of the way it's set up in that building tool for Super Shooting Towns looks extremely similar to Mario Maker. It's a grid system with a lot of the icons looking quite similar, so I'm not saying Nintendo was inspired by Super Shooting Towns. I've probably never heard of it, but it is kind of interesting how similar those tool sets to create your own levels actually are compared between the two games. As far as a recommendation on this game, definitely if you have an FM Towns or a Marty, I would absolutely pick it up. You can find it for right around $100 complete. Considering it's a rare shooting game, that's extremely cheap considering what you're getting. I love this stage here with all those clouds in the back. It does really give you a great example of just how many parallax layers are being used at once. I think this is probably visually the most impressive shmup game on the Marty that I've actually had the pleasure to encounter. So it's a real hidden gem. Hopefully me saying that doesn't end up making this game more popular, increasing the price though, for sure. But go ahead and watch the rest of Super Shooting Towns, and I'll come back when we start talking about Flying Shark, and we'll go over that game, but just enjoy some of the gameplay. I'll be back in a second. And now we're taking a look at Flying Shark, released in 1993, published by Ving and developed by Toaplan. This is Toaplan's third shooter that they developed. You are operating this biplane right here, so it has kind of like a war theme to it. You're going to see a lot of tanks, different fighter planes, and ships. It's kind of interesting. You are piloting a biplane and you're fighting other biplanes, but you will see a lot of large aircraft carriers. So as far as what era this was set in, really not 100% sure. This game was only released on the Nintendo Entertainment System as far as console ports are concerned, and then pretty much every other port is PC based, whether it's the Amiga, whether it's the FM Towns, Sharp 68000. Definitely considering the Marty is like console variant where you can just put this disc in and it'll automatically boot in. I guess you could kind of consider this the other console port, but the only kind of port that you'd actually be able to bring home and play outside of like a obscure Japanese or European computer system is going to be that NES version. Gameplay wise, it is quite challenging. Graphically, it's decent. It can be a little bland in spots, but as far as the core gameplay mechanics, there is some challenge there. The bullets do flash, so they are kind of easy to see, although they do come from the corners of the screen, so there is a little bit of what I would feel to be cheap deaths involved in the game, just because it does have that scrolling screen where you can actually end up having enemies off screen that you can't see that are shooting towards you. So when you beat a particular segment, you go ahead and land at this landing strip. You just give a little bonus, and then you end up flying right back off. So the transitions from level to level are really smooth and seamless. So that is a nice thing. There's not a lot of loading times or anything like that. It's very close to arcade perfect. There are a few just little graphical changes. The resolution is scaled down ever so slightly, but as far as a port's concerned, this is near arcade perfect, as is the X68000 version as well. I can't say I'd recommend the game for the price. It's going to run you a couple $100 if you're able to find it. It's not super readily available. That was one of the older sales I was able to find on eBay. If you want to check this game out, I would definitely just emulate the PCB in MAME. Perfectly possible to do that. It's going to cost you nothing, because I really wouldn't say that this game is worth the cost. Fun to play, definitely something that I want to be able to beat, but I just wouldn't drop the money on it. Short of that, really appreciate you guys watching. If you could do us a huge favor, just go down below and hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring that bell as well so you get notified of new video releases. It takes us a lot of time to make each of these, so all the support really helps us, and we appreciate each and every one of you. Otherwise, you can follow us on Instagram at Chicago Game Collector. But stop back next Tuesday. We're going to have another episode on the Marty. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.